0 seconds. Something impossible has happened. The moon has lost the sideways velocity that keeps it in orbit and is now falling almost directly toward Earth. In roughly 5 days, it will strike the North Atlantic. At first, almost nothing changes. The tidal pull scales as the inverse q of distance, which means the final hours will be incomparably more violent than the first days. For now, the moon looks normal. Cities still have power, cars still move. Humanity has less than a week. 4 days before impact. Everyone learns the exact day they will die. Every major observatory independently confirms the collision. There is no trajectory that misses. There is no technology capable of moving the moon. Governments convene emergency sessions. Stock exchanges suspend trading after prices become meaningless. Insurance markets stop functioning. Companies cancel projects scheduled weeks ahead. Many employees still go to work, not because they expect civilization to continue, but because electricity, food distribution, hospitals, and transportation still require people to operate them. The first strange behavioral divide appears. Some people empty bank accounts and buy anything they ever wanted. Others stop spending money entirely because money means nothing anymore. Airports fill with people trying to reach another country before aviation collapses. At Times Square, thousands stand staring at a countdown where advertisements used to be. The world has not collapsed, but for the first time in history, almost nobody is planning for next week. 2 days before impact. Society starts losing its long-term functions. The moon is now roughly 30% larger in the sky. Tidal forcing has more than doubled. Coastal water levels begin departing visibly from historical predictions. Harbors develop increasingly violent currents. Low waterfronts flood during the worst tidal phases, then drain far below normal levels. Nuclear reactors begin controlled shutdowns, chemical plants reduce inventories and pressure. Military commands move portions of national leadership underground. Historic archives and genetic repositories are copied into hardened facilities. Private bunker companies are besieged by people, offering everything they own for spaces that no longer exist. Abandoned mines and Cold War shelters fill with people who believe depth alone can save them. Scientists publicly explain that this will not be a coastal-only event. Most people move anyway, because moving feels better than waiting. 1 day before impact, the ocean starts taking cities back. The moon looks almost twice its normal size. Tidal forcing is roughly 6 times normal. Enormous volumes of water begin moving through bays, estuaries, and continental shelves far faster than they normally can. In New York, water repeatedly pours across Battery Park and low waterfront areas. New York Harbor develops destructive reversing currents that tear smaller vessels from their moorings. Miami's barrier islands disappear beneath moving seawater and briefly reappear between surges. In London, the Thames behaves unlike a tidal river. The Thames barrier is absorbing loads it was never designed to handle. Museum workers in New York and London carry irreplaceable objects upstairs, knowing the buildings themselves probably won't survive. Thousands of yacht owners head offshore, convinced deep water is safer than land. Others climb apartment rooftops simply to watch the moon rising impossibly large over flooded neighborhoods. Deaths accumulate in the thousands from drowning, vehicle crashes, and structural failures. This is only the beginning. 12 hours before impact. Entire coastlines begin breaking apart. The moon is about 140,000 kilometers away. Tidal forcing is roughly 20 times normal. Seawalls collapse. Beaches and barrier islands erode in hours. Submarine slopes fail as continental shelves are repeatedly loaded and unloaded, generating conventional tsunamis on top of the lunar tides. Around Lower Manhattan, water no longer behaves like a predictable harbor. The Tagus floods portions of Lisbon. The Netherlands' coastal defenses take loads they were never designed to handle. The moon also raises a small tide in the solid Earth itself, now pulled 20 times harder. Faults already close to failure begin slipping. Earthquake swarms increase. Rock falls spread through mountain regions. Doctors physically carry ventilated patients through flooded hospital entrances when ambulances can no longer reach them. The death toll climbs toward the hundreds of thousands. 6 hours before impact. Coastal civilization begins disappearing. The moon drops below 100,000 kilometers. Tidal forcing approaches 75 times normal. The word tide is becoming inadequate. Huge ocean masses are moving across continental shelves. In New Orleans, the lower Mississippi system is assaulted by enormous oscillating water levels. Levees fail in multiple places. Low sections of the city disappear beneath violent moving water. In Tokyo Bay, water levels oscillate wildly, while the first serious seismic disturbances begin beneath Japan. Large ports cease operating. Commercial aviation largely ends as coastal airports disappear and crews stop showing up for flights. Electrical grids split into isolated regional networks as flooded substations and transmission failures accumulate. People trapped on low islands abandon houses and climb radio towers, hotels, and parking structures. Large ships already at sea deliberately avoid ports and point toward deep water. Emergency helicopter crews continue pulling people from roofs until fuel supplies run out. 3 hours before impact. The oceans are reshaping the continents. The moon is roughly 60,000 kilometers away. Tidal forcing is now hundreds of times stronger than normal. Oceans no longer have time to establish anything resembling normal tidal behavior. In some places, continental shelves are exposed. Elsewhere, gigantic water masses surge inland. River valleys funnel the moving ocean deep into continents. Solid Earth deformation is now too large to remain elastic. Major faults rupture. Strong earthquakes erupt across continents. Enormous landslides bury mountain valleys. Volcanoes already close to eruption are pushed over the edge. Engineers at Hoover Dam open spillway outlets while they still have electrical control, trying to reduce water load before the structure fails entirely. Other dams don't survive. Their reservoirs pour down valleys already choked with earthquake debris. Some miners refuse evacuation orders and stay deep underground, reasoning that hundreds of meters of rock offer the best survival odds. People camping in open countryside discover that avoiding buildings doesn't help when the hillsides themselves begin moving. 1 hour before impact. Earth's crust begins failing worldwide. The moon is only about 31,000 kilometers from Earth's center. Tidal forcing approaches 2,000 times normal. A solid Earth tide that normally deforms Earth by centimeters is now attempting deformation on the scale of hundreds of meters. The lithosphere cannot bend that far. It breaks. In Los Angeles, fault systems rupture simultaneously. High-rises undergo motions far beyond any seismic design assumption. Many suffer partial or complete structural collapse. Industrial districts are torn apart and catch fire. In Tokyo, rail viaducts collapse, elevated expressways fold, and reclaimed shoreline districts liquefy into the bay. Mountain-scale landslides bury inhabited valleys across the Himalayas. Multiple unstable volcanic systems erupt. The moon has entered the orbital region of geostationary satellites. GPS and communications constellations begin failing. Blast doors close at military command bunkers. Outside some hardened government facilities, thousands gather, knowing there is nowhere near enough capacity inside. Underground subway platforms fill in inland cities, not because anyone believes they guarantee survival, but because the streets above are collapsing. The pre-impact death toll is moving through the tens of millions. 30 minutes before impact. The moon begins breaking apart. The moon is roughly 21,000 kilometers from Earth's center. Tidal forcing is almost 6,000 times normal. Then another threshold is crossed. Earth pulls harder on the near side of the moon than on the far side. And close enough to Earth, that difference becomes comparable to the gravity holding the moon together. Moonquakes rip through the lunar crust. Fractures thousands of kilometers long open. Enormous slabs break loose. The moon remains mostly coherent. It's solid rock moving fast, but fragments are separating from its edges and beginning their own trajectories toward the surface. GPS is gone. Much of the global internet has fractured. Emergency sirens in ruined cities fall silent one by one. Not because the emergency has ended, but because there is nobody left operating the systems. 5 minutes before impact. The moon dominates the sky. For people beneath the approach path, the lunar disk spans tens of degrees. It no longer looks like an object in space. It looks like another world filling the sky, visibly fractured, shedding debris from its edges in real time. The Atlantic below is pulled upward into a colossal gravitational bulge. Earthquakes continue without meaningful pauses. The global grid is largely dead. Aircraft are gone from the sky. Governments exist only as isolated command rooms. From surviving high ground around London and North Africa, the moon's mountains and craters are visible to the naked eye. People gather outdoors despite continuous shaking because there is no longer a realistic evacuation route to follow. Deep underground, crews seal air intakes and close external blast doors. 400 kilometers above Earth, the ISS crew can see entire coastlines submerged beneath enormous tides and fires spreading across earthquake-damaged continents. The moon now occupies a gigantic portion of their sky, visibly fractured and shedding debris. Ground control has largely gone silent. There is nowhere on Earth left to evacuate to. 1 minute before impact. The first piece is hit. The moon is only thousands of kilometers above the Atlantic. Fragments that separated from its edges arrive first, punching through the atmosphere like enormous asteroids. Each creates its own incandescent explosion, steam plume, and shock wave. Some strike the Atlantic, others strike land near the main impact region. Along the Atlantic-facing continents, people see the horizon flash white before the moon itself arrives. Underground survivors feel individual precursor impacts through solid rock. In the last functioning bunkers, clocks count down the remaining seconds. Hundreds of millions may already be dead from megatides, earthquakes, landslides, and infrastructure collapse. Then the main body arrives, the impact. The 3,475-kilometer-wide moon strikes the North Atlantic at nearly 10 kilometers per second. The Atlantic is a microscopic layer compared with the impactor. The moon punches through several kilometers of seawater almost instantly, then hits oceanic crust. Energy release, approximately 3.6 quetajoules, equivalent to millions of Chicxulub impacts. The ocean beneath the moon flash vaporizes. Ocean crust melts and vaporizes. Enormous volumes of upper mantle melt. The moon itself is shock compressed, shattered, and partially converted into molten and vaporized rock. A rapidly expanding incandescent mixture of lunar rock, terrestrial crust, mantle material, and superheated seawater erupts thousands of kilometers upward and outward. Around the impact zone, the surface does not remain solid surface. 1 minute after impact, the Atlantic hemisphere ignites. The impact creates an enormous incandescent vapor and melt plume, radiating over the visible hemisphere. Near Lisbon, the sky becomes an overwhelming white-orange furnace. People outdoors receive unsurvivable thermal exposure almost instantly. Vegetation flashes into flame, stone and concrete crack and spall from thermal shock. In New York, the Atlantic horizon becomes brighter than the sun. Anyone looking toward it is blinded. Exposed people are lethally burned almost immediately. Large portions of the city ignite nearly simultaneously. Not isolated fires, but simultaneous ignition across entire districts. The seismic energy from a moon-sized impactor is beyond any geological frame of reference. The planet's crust does not merely shake, it is subjected to forces that no building, no structure, and no natural landform was designed to survive. Anything still standing after the pre-impact earthquake sequence is struck again, harder. Far above the burning planet, the ISS crew sees the impact plume expand beyond the atmosphere. Within minutes, hypervelocity ejecta begins crossing low Earth orbit. The station is struck and destroyed, or, if it somehow avoided the first debris, left severely damaged without ground support. 30 minutes after impact, the far side of Earth receives the global thermal pulse. Ejecta launched onto high suborbital trajectories begins re-entering across every continent. The sky fills with incandescent streaks over Australia, China, the Americas, and Africa simultaneously. The thermal energy from re-entry heats the atmosphere globally. Exposed forests, cities, and surface materials on the far side from the impact, which had been spared the direct radiant pulse, now receive a second thermal catastrophe from above. Sydney, Beijing, and Sao Paulo receive lethal conditions. The physical damage is not uniform. Local geography, cloud cover, and the angle of ejecta re-entry create variation. But the scale is planetary. The surviving surface population is being reduced towards zero, not by the impact alone, but by what the impact launches into the sky and brings back down. 1 hour after impact. The Atlantic coastlines are physically destroyed. The impact-generated wave system reaches the surrounding continents. These are not conventional tsunamis. They are enormous volumes of displaced ocean, ejecta-heated water, and moving debris. The Atlantic basin itself has been partially evacuated and is now sloshing back in every direction. Lower Manhattan disappears inside a moving wall of water, ships, and collapsed buildings. Remaining skyscrapers, already damaged by the pre-impact earthquake sequence and the thermal pulse, are struck again at their foundations as the water scours away the ground beneath them. Liberty Island is physically torn apart. Brooklyn's low districts are stripped. JFK and LaGuardia cease to exist as recognizable airports. The subway system fills violently through every entrance simultaneously. Boston's low metropolitan basin is overwhelmed. Florida is swept by enormous ocean incursions from multiple directions simultaneously. Large sections of the Atlantic coastal map are physically rewritten. This is no longer a collection of flooded cities. It is a new coastline. 1 day after impact. The oceans become atmosphere. The impact deposited so much energy into Earth that enormous volumes of ocean water are being heated past boiling. Returning ejecta has added another global heating pulse. The oceans are collapsing into a superheated steam atmosphere. Large regions of crust remain molten. Around the Atlantic impact zone, a planetary-scale melt region replaces the former ocean basin. Almost every human who remained on the surface is dead, from pre-impact megatides, earthquakes, thermal radiation, structural collapse, the Atlantic megawave, and atmospheric heating. A tiny number may still be alive inside exceptionally deep, hardened facilities. But outside, there is no longer a damaged civilization waiting for them. There is no habitable surface, no agriculture, no functioning biosphere, no rescue network. The surviving bunkers are tombs with delayed timers. 1 week after impact. Humanity ends underground. Earth has become a world of magma, steam, and rock vapor. Massive regions remain molten. The atmosphere is thick with superheated water vapor, silicate material, and volcanic gases. Ejecta that never immediately returned is still orbiting Earth and falling back. Some secondary impacts are themselves larger than civilization-ending asteroids. Deep facilities continue running on stored power. Then systems begin failing. Cooling loops cannot reject heat into the outside environment. Filters clog, generators overheat, spare parts become finite. Water recycling fails. Air becomes increasingly difficult to maintain. Even a mechanically surviving bunker has nowhere to reopen its doors to. There is no surface ecology from which a population can rebuild. The final, isolated human populations disappear. Humanity is extinct. 1 month after impact. Earth cools without civilization. The most violent bombardment has begun to decline. The former North Atlantic is dominated by an enormous impact and melt province. Huge parts of the crust are still molten or recently solidified. A dense steam atmosphere blankets the planet. Impact debris continues reaccreting. Normal liquid oceans have not returned. New York, London, Tokyo, Paris, and Los Angeles no longer exist as recognizable metropolitan landscapes. At most, buried fragments of foundations and deep underground infrastructure remain inside an altered crust. Complex surface ecosystems have disappeared. 1 year after impact, Earth survived. Almost everything on its surface did not. Earth itself remains gravitationally intact. The moon did not blow the planet apart. Instead, it forced Earth through something approaching a new Hadean-style surface state. The same kind of violent, molten, nearly uninhabitable world that existed in the first hundreds of millions of years after the planet formed. The impact basin and enormous melt provinces continue cooling. Steam begins condensing where conditions finally permit. Water may slowly begin collecting in newly formed basins. There is no humanity. No surviving city, no forest, no surface agricultural ecosystem, no recognizable modern ocean biosphere. But the planet may not be completely sterile. Several kilometers underground, protected by enormous masses of rock, some microbial ecosystems may have escaped the worst surface heating. If anything living eventually repopulates this new Earth, it begins from there. Not from bunkers, not from submarines, not from survivors standing in ruins. Human history ended within days of the moon leaving its orbit. What comes after, if anything, is not a recovery, it is a new beginning, measured in geological time.